Transformers Chronicles.
Episode 1. Back to Earth. 2 years later, after defeating Megatron, Optimus Prime leaves a grown-up Bumblebee in charge of Cybertron's elite guard cadet, Strongarm, who's been chasing after Sideswipe. Then they unknowingly travel to Earth and, you guessed it, new location. Then a new Decepticon chases Sideswipe, who meets young Russell Clay, calling himself Underbite. Underbite chases them to the scrapyard where another Dinobot is hidden inside the stasis cell. The Dinobot, named Dino Shout, goads Underbite into wrecking his cell, and Underbite spots the scrapyard, where Russell's dad is here. Episode 2. Bee's New Team. As Bumblebee heads to the scrapyard, where Denny Clay is, Dino Shout follows suit. Then, as Underbite prepares to chow down on some metal, Dino Shout intercepts him and they begin fighting. However, Underbite sees Crown City and heads there. The Autobots gathered themselves together, and Dino Shout noticed that his foe was gone. Insisting on maintaining a low profile, Strongarm scans a new vehicle mode, and so does Sideswipe. As Bee's new team tries to contain Underbite, Optimus Prime appears and defeats him, but leaves Bee to lead his new team, who captured Underbite, and Bee places Dino on probation. Episode 3. Be Your Own Leader. Bumblebee was getting used to his new team, but as awkward as it gets, he still can't act as a leader. So, he tries talking to Optimus Prime by mirror. Meanwhile, Russell and Denny Clay infiltrate the Crown City Museum after hearing about a stasis pod being here, and it breaks open, revealing a Decepticon Buffaloid named Terrashock. The team moves in to stop Terrashock, to no avail. Then, Bee spots a picture of cowboys and has an idea. Using the cowboy thing to their advantage, the Bee team captures Terrashock. Episode 4. Trust Me. As Bumblebee and Grimlock take on the Sharktican Hammerstrike, Strongarm and Sideswipe struggle to trust each other to take down Steeljaw, a fellow Decepticon who escaped from the prison ship, Alchemer. The next day, the team encounters a Caspigo, which turns out to be a Decepticon named Thunderhoof, working on a space bridge. But as they get closer, Sideswipe's loyalties come into question. However, with a plan made by Sideswipe, he and Bee disable the space bridge, ruining Thunderhoof's plans. Then, Steeljaw invites Thunderhoof to join his crew. Episode 5. Dino Dilemma. Back on Dinobot Island, a crazed Dinobot heads to Crown City. Meanwhile, as Fixit was working on the alarm, it only annoys Dino Shout, who goes crazy and attacks his friends. Then, the Autobots discover that Dino Shout was being controlled by a cybertick named Minitron. The team subdues and captures Minitron. Dino Shout's formally recognized as an Autobot, but later that morning, the Dinobot who escaped from Dinobot Island attacks Dino Shout. The team subdues the Dinobot, who names herself Slash, and interrogates her. She soon calms down, sleeping. Episode 6. Jungle Journey. As Slash is recuperating in the scrapyard, Strongarm has her first solo mission in the jungle, with Bumblebee, to find a Decepticon signal. And that Decepticon signal is a frog-like Decepticon named Springload, who is hunting for the lost city of Doradus. Then, Slash wakes up, confused and finding nothing to shred. But she helps out with fixing Fixit's new weapon. Back in the jungle, Strongarm and Bumblebee find Springload and capture him. They return home to find that Slash has become docile. Episode 7. Bounty Hunters. 2 warring bounty hunters, Fracture and Drift, battle for the bounty placed on Bumblebee for reasons unknown. But then, Bumblebee saves Drift. So he owes him a life debt. Meanwhile, another bounty hunter named Lockdown finds some intel on the Dinobots. At the scrapyard, Fracture finds the base and captures Denny. Drift and his minicons, Suzaku and Genbu, are tasked with protecting Bumblebee. Then, Genbu saves Denny and Bumblebee defeats Fracture. Meanwhile, Lockdown discovers that the Dinobots have a leader named Grimlock. Episode 4, Jailbreak. Remember Quillfire? The Decepticon who turned Bumblebee into a little kid? Well, he's back, and he brings the Diuretis-obsessed Spring Load on an adventure. Then, Genbu returns with Drift and Suzuku, with Russell disagreeing on his harsh teachings. Meanwhile, Quillfire and Spring Load steal a heavily armored tank for protection against the Autobots. The B-team tries to stop the tank, but with a little help from Drift, they recaptured Quillfire and Spring Load. Drift decides to stay on Earth and learn the basics of teamwork. Episode 9, Windblade. During a training session, Sideswipe stumbles into a fight between an elite guard officer named Windblade and a Decepticon and gets mistaken for one. Then, Windblade sees his Autobot logo and stops attacking. Sideswipe introduces her to his friends. Then, she's trailing a Queen Bee Decepticon named Ziza. Meanwhile, Ziza, aided by another Decepticon named Nightbird, has informed that the Autobots are coming to get Ziza. Going out of their way to catch Ziza, Windblade and the Autobots fight and capture Ziza. But Nightbird gets away. Episode 10, Shapeshifter. The B-team faces off against a shape-shifting Decepticon named Pseudo in a ghost town. Then, Lockdown gets a tip from a friend who looks familiar. Episode 11, Con Job. A Decepticon con artist named Clampdown finds himself drawn into Steeljaw's pack. Then, the Autobots trail Clampdown and he runs away, knowing that you know who is trying to scrap him. Meanwhile, Clampdown calls a truce between Thunderhoof, who wants him dead for getting him arrested. And Slash has tracked his scent the moment she and the others arrive. Episodes 12 and 13, The Fallen. Strongarm and Sideswipe were investigating what happens to be Fracture, but got captured by his helpers, Gedu and Medu. Then the B-team races to find their friends, and then Windblade is captured too. Optimus Prime returns from his 2-year journey to save Bumblebee and team before a certain Decepticon we never saw again finally appears. He was known as the Fallen. The first Megatronus, known as the Fallen, fight the Autobots with ease. Then Steeljaw knows of his plans to combine the Allspark and the Anti-Spark from Unicron destroying 2 planets and attacks him, to no avail. Then, Bumblebee, Strongarm and Sideswipe combine their powers to defeat Megatronus, all while Bee finally does a perfect battle cry. Optimus decides to stay on Earth, as Bee's equal. Episode 14, Home and Away. Now that Optimus Prime is back on Earth, things are getting pretty lively until a global Decepticon threat splits the team into 2, the home team and away team. The away team heads to the Arctic, while the home team has trouble fighting a Decepticon named Overload, who demands Optimus Prime. The away team chases another Decepticon named Polar Claw, with awkward results. Returning from Hawkins after 2 years, the Neo Autobots, consisting of Dragonite, Moldive, Sharkbite, Toravolt, Windfire, and Rustbucket, all head to Crown City, Ohio, where an Autobot signal is found. Episode 15, Overloaded. While Overload gathers 2 Cyclone Minicons to do his bidding, Bumblebee chases after him. Meanwhile, the away team is still in the Arctic, chasing Polar Claw. Optimus and the others use camouflage to hide themselves. Then, the Neo Autobots are still traveling in waves. Bumblebee and Overload continue their battle, but he's no match when he has 2 Cyclones. The away team finally captures Polar Claw and the home team defeats Overload, knowing that Bee has called in some reinforcements. Episode 16, Rock and Roll. Bee has quite jumpy, chasing after Decepticons like Springload. So, the home team suggests that he must take a day off. Then, B finds that his favorite band, Lucky Clover, is playing live tonight. Meanwhile, Bisque and his two new minicons, Hammer and Anvil, are doing some thievery of their own. As Lucky Clover starts playing, Bumblebee spots Bisque and his two minicons and starts fighting them. The Clovers continue playing while B finishes off Bisque. Then, Drago and his team reach Crown City, hoping that he will meet Optimus Prime here. Episode 17, Drago and Friends. As soon as Bumblebee picks up on the Autobot signal from earlier, the Decepticon Nightbird shows up again. But then, a feather stops her in his tracks. But where did that feather come from? When the home team goes back to the scrapyard, they have an unexpected meeting with the Neo-Autobots. Although there was some confusion between the Autobots and Neo-Autobots, another one cleared up the confusion, revealing to be an Autobot named Rust Bucket. Then, Nightbird appears and the team of Autobots and Neo-Autobots capture her. Then, they properly introduce themselves and B contacts Optimus Prime, saying there's someone to meet with once he gets back. Episode 18, United Front. The home team has new members, in the form of Neo-Autobots. While Optimus Prime and his away team are still catching Decepticons, the home team discuss plans for raiding Decepticon Island. Then, Knockout, Breakdown and Arachnid stumble upon Decepticon Island and meet Saberhorn. Luckily, Lockdown has other options. Then, as time approaches, the ground bridge is finally fixed. Not only that, the away team returns, and Dragonite finally meets Optimus Prime. The sight of these two meeting makes Bumblebee jealous, but once they get ready, Steeljaw waits for them. Episodes 19 and 20, Decepticon Island. The entire team is finally reunited, however they discover that Clampdown is here with a familiar face, Ratchet and his minicon, Undertone. The Autobots interrogate Clampdown, but he faints, leaving a holonote from a minicon in Hawkins. The Autobots head to Decepticon Island, but they need to disguise Dino Shout as a Decepticon, then they are shocked at the number of Decepticons it has. The Autobots are outnumbered by the sheer number of Decepticons. Luckily, Dragonite thinks of a plan to beat them, free the minicons, and blow this island. Each team takes out a Decepticon, with Steeljaw left to take on Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and Dragonite. Steeljaw becomes more powerful than ever, but not enough to defeat the three. Episode 21, Minicons Rising. For their victory against Decepticon Island, Bumblebee gives the Neo-Autobots a tour to Nevada for various reasons. Then, as they tour around the missile silo that used to be the Autobot base, Omega-1, but now, it's the Neo-Autobots base, so they call it their training grounds, a Decepticon named Paralon stumbles upon a minicon named Buzzstrike. The Autobots fight off the supercharged Decepticon, and Buzzstrike frees Paralon from his control. Episode 22, Lockdown vs. Decepticon Island. Lockdown found Decepticon signals on an island, including Saberhorns, but he was too late. So, he starts hunting Decepticons left and right, including the ones responsible for stealing his score. Then, the B team searches for the minicon weaponizers, only to find a bunch of Decepticons and Lockdown on the hunt. Then, Strongarm does whatever it takes to cuff Scatterspike, only to find that she's gone too. Lockdown finally hunts them down but suggests a big bargain about something big happening in the universe. Episode 23, Return of an Old Enemy. As the Autobots make a trail about the minicons they've encountered, Dino Shout meets a monk named Gunther, who teaches him the art of patience. Then, the scavengers get help from Thermidor and his minicon, Tricerashot, with Lockdown in tow. And, Dinashout's still learning the art of patience with Gunther. Meanwhile, Thermidor is headed to a ski lift, with Bumblebee and Drago working together to beat him, with the help of Dino Shout. Luckily, someone's been reporting the fight to a familiar. Episode 24, Trust equals hope. Anyone can have trouble trusting each other. Just ask the minicons and Sideswipe. And Windfire has trouble trusting her teammates, since she can't stop being royalty. Then, Starscream returns with his new crew, wanting to know where his minicons are. He kicks the scavengers off his ship, and Shadelock locates the minicons in the scrapyard. Then Windfire meets the weaponizers and they capture both Windfire and Bumblebee and the Minicons, but Rust Bucket calls on a familiar face to help the Autobots out, Optimus Prime. Episode 25, Starscream returns. Bumblebee, captured by Starscream, knows of his plan to unite himself with all 7 of the weaponizer Minicons, while Optimus Prime gets filled in on recent events. Then, the Autobots are attacked by the weaponizers and Sideswipe and Strongarm get possessed. Optimus arrives and breaks up the fight. The group of Autobots and Minicons arrive to rescue Bumblebee, Suzu, Genbu, and Windfire, and they fight off the scavengers with the help of the weaponizers, but they were captured by Starscream, gloating that he's finally won. Episode 26, I Am Worthy. With Starscream having the weaponizer Minicons in his hands, he notices that one's missing, but he starts the merging process anyway. Aerobolt feels pain from his brethren getting hurt. The Autobots track them down and rescue them, but Starscream stops them and takes Aerobolt. Then Starscream is finally linked with all 7 weaponizers, however a signal separates Aerobolt from Starscream. Aerobolt merges with Optimus and fights Starscream to a point where he and Bumblebee defeat him, freeing the Minicons. Next time, Combiner's Arc.